Okay, let's read from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, Text 10. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, Text 10. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, Text 10. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Satvatiya Sattvatojayamukirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, to Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, to Mother Sarasvati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavat utama shloke bhaktir bhavati naistiki. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, entitled Divinity and Divine Service, Text 10. Kamasya
Kamasya
Nendriya Pritir
Indriya Pritir
Labho
Labho
Iveta
Veta
Yavata
Yavadha
Ivasya
Vivasya
Tattva Jigyasa
Tattva Jigyasa
Narto
Narto
Yash
Yash
Teha
Teha
Karmabi
Karmabi
Kamasyanendriya Pritir
Kanamyasya Nidriya Pritir
Labo Jiveta Yavata
Nabo Jiveta Yavata
Vivasya Tattva Jigyasa
Vivasya Tattva Jigyasa
Narto Yash Cheha Karmabi
Narto Yash Cheha Karmabi
Kamasyanendriya Pritir
Yasya Nindriya Pritir
Labo Jiveta Yavata
Nabo Jiveta Yavata
Vivasya Tattva Jigyasa
Vivasya Tattva Jigyasa
Nato Yas Cheha Karmabi
Narto Yash Cheha Karmabi
Kamasyanendriya Pritir
Kamasya Nindriya Pritir
Labo Jiveta Yavata
Nabo Jiveta Yavata
Vivasya Tattva Jigyasa
Vivasya Tattva Jigyasa
Nartayas Cheha Karmabi
Narto Yash Cheha Karmabi Kamasya Nindriya Pritir
Kamasyanendriya Pritir
Labo Jivata Yavata
Labo Jiveta Yavata
Jivasya Tattva Vigyasa
Vivasya Tattva Jigyasa
Nato Yasche Karmabi
Nartoyas Cheha Karmabi
Kamasya Nindriya Pritir Kamasya Nindriya Pritir
Pritir
Labo Jiveta Yavata
Labo
Labo Jiveta
Jiveta
Yavata Jivasya Tattva Jnanasa Jivasya Tattva Vigyasa Nartoyaschata Karma Bihi Nartayasche karmabi.
Kamasya nendriya pritir.
Masyanendriya pritir.
Jiveta yavata.
Abhojiveta yavata.
Tasya tattva jigyasa.
Vivasya tattva jigyasa.
Oyascheha karmapi.
Nartayascha karmabi. Kamasya. Kamasya. Of desires.
Of desires.
Na.
Na.
Not.
Not.
Indriya.
Indriya.
Senses. Senses. Priti.
Priti.
Satisfaction.
Satisfaction.
Labha.
Labha.
Gain.
Gain.
Jiveta.
Jiveta.
Self-preservation.
Self-preservation.
Yavata.
Yavata.
So much so.
So much so.
Vivasya.
Jivasya.
Of the living being.
Of the living being.
Tattva.
Tattva.
Absolute truth.
The absolute truth.
Jigyasa.
Jigyasa.
Inquiries.
Inquiries.
Na.
Na.
No.
Not.
Not.
Artha.
Nata.
And.
And.
Yacha iha.
Yakshahiha.
Whatsoever else.
Whatsoever else.
Karma be.
Karmadi.
By occupational activities.
By occupational activities.
Translation. Life's desire should never be aimed at gratifying the senses. One should desire to live only because human life enables one to inquire about the absolute truth. This should be the goal of all works. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Yeah. Some might be used to a slightly different translation. I'm reading this. I was also surprised by the translation. So there's, slightly different translations. The meaning is the same. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The completely bewildered material civilization is wrongly directed towards the fulfillment of desires and sense gratification. In such civilization, in all spheres of life, the ultimate end is sense gratification. In politics, social service, altruism, philanthropy, and ultimately in religion or even in salvation, the very same tint of sense gratification is ever increasingly predominant. In the political field, the leaders of men fight with one another to fulfill their personal sense gratification. The voters adore the so-called leaders only when they promise sense gratification. As soon as the voters are dissatisfied in their own sense satisfaction, they dethrone the leaders. The leaders almost always disappoint the voters by not satisfying their senses. The same is applicable in all other fields. No one is serious about the problems of life. Even those who are on the path of salvation desire to become with the absolute truth and desire to commit spiritual suicide for sense gratification. One should satisfy the senses only in so much as is required for self-preservation and not for sense gratification, because the body is made of senses which also require a certain amount of satisfaction. There are regulative directions for satisfaction of such senses, but the senses are not meant for unrestricted enjoyment. For example, marriage or the combination of a man with a woman is necessary for progeny, but it is not meant for sense enjoyment. In the absence of such voluntary restraint, there is propaganda for family planning. But foolish men do not know that family planning is automatically executed as soon as there is search after the absolute truth. Seekers of the absolute truth are never allured by unnecessary engagements in sense gratification, because the serious students seeking the absolute truth are always overwhelmed with the work of researching the truth. Yes. Okay. In every sphere of life, therefore, the ultimate end must be seeking after the absolute truth. And that sort of engagement will make everyone happy because they will be less engaged in varieties of sense gratification. And what that absolute truth is explained as follows. Om Gyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayamrupa Kadamayam Darati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganaragnatanvitam Tom Chajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitan Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakad Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagat Pate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorange Radhe Vrindavan Ishri Vishabhanusate Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpata Yubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Byevacha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, Text 10. Kamasya Nendriya Pritir Labo Jivete Yavata Jivasya Tattva Jigyasya Nartayas Chaya Karma Be. Life's desires should never be aimed at gratifying the senses. One should desire a healthy life or self-preservation, because human life is meant for inquiry into the absolute truth. Nothing else should be the goal of one's works. Okay. I used a slightly different translation there than the one I read a few minutes ago. All right. So this is Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad, it means beautiful, full of opulence and beauty. Srimad. And so Srimad Bhagavatam, each verse is beautiful and full of beautiful layers and layers of meaning. Like layers and layers, not like, oh, it's so complicated. I mean, it is layered. It's like simple and profound. And that's why, like, okay, well, it's probably, like in the early 80s when I first read this verse, and now, and I'm reading, Bhagavatam over and over in my personal reading. I'm reading Srimad Bhagavatam again and again, over and over. We read all of Prabhupada's books over and over. And so there's just, there's rich, beautiful meaning, personally, practically, philosophically, in application. So all the text of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam and Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, all the texts are transcendental, meaning beautifully transcendental to the modes of material nature, and fully in the Shuddha Sattva platform, pure, emanating from that realm of pure devotional service, pure bhakti to God. And so each vibration, Kamasya Nendriya Pritir Labo Jiveta Yavata, each vibration conveys truth, beauty, and goodness in its absolute sense. And simultaneously, each vibration, it is identical with that truth that it conveys. And okay, so all the verses are transcendental. This verse is a particularly foundational verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. Like, if we look at all the verses, I don't know, somehow, for different reasons, I was thinking about, like, the principle of life purpose, living purposefully, principle of conscious living, living purposefully. And this verse came to mind. This perhaps is the quintessential verse in all the Vedas about what it means to live purposefully. And so, and Prabhupada quotes this verse a lot. This is right here, kind of in the middle of a series of about 18, 19 verses that Prabhupada quotes a lot. So, okay, we can examine it. Look at, Prabhupada likes to use the word threadbare, like thoroughly. So life's desires, that's the first term. Life's desires means we're going to have desires. Okay, say, oh, when I'm enlightened and then I'm realized and I'm pure, then no more desires. Nope. No, it's the nature of the self to desire. Prabhupada often quotes Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Bhukti Mukti Siddhikami, Sakaliya Shanta, that as long as we had any form of material desires, even desire, I mean, there's a lot to this. This is one of those verses and purports, even though the purport's not so long, we could easily do a week or a month course on this verse and purport. So Prabhupada talks about the principle of spiritual suicide. See, it's like, even those who are coming out, even those who aren't, they're not interested in just materialism and enjoying, in a greedy, lusty way, but they go towards spiritually. But the idea is, oh, then they want spiritual suicide, and even those who are on the path of salvation desire to become with the absolute truth and desire to commit spiritual suicide for sense gratification. Spiritual suicide meaning some philosophy that's false, some philosophy where the idea is it's our eternal personality there is no eternal personality. That actually just a few days ago at the Prabhupada House in Melrose, we had some nice philosophical dialogue with one gentleman named Steve, who was there, and it was nice. Steve was very intelligent, and because he described, maybe back in the 60s, he looked to be maybe about my age, something like that, maybe older. And back in the 60s, he would hear things that, like the analogy that like each drop or each stream, it'll merge into the river. It'll merge into the river. So just when this body dies, then we all merge into the oneness, and we no longer exist as an individual living entity. So I said, no, this person that is according to the Bhagavatam, according to Bhagavad Gita, according to logic, according to morality. Because otherwise, look at it. Let's say if we all just merge into the oneness. So then, okay, so however I live this life, like I could live this life in ways that are just considered gross and evil and destructive and selfish and immoral and unethical, or I can live this life as nice, kind. However I live this life, we all, after the body dies, we all merge into the oneness. Like, how's that even fair? Okay, so I mean, now Krishna, in one sense, Krishna begins his philosophical teachings in Bhagavad Gita in chapter 2. Natvevaham jatuna samnatvam name janadipa nacheva na bhavishyama sarvevayam atapram. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, Arjuna, nor all these kings on the battlefield, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. So what Krishna is saying is, some of you were in the recent Sappho 3 experience. So we start the course with that verse, perhaps you remember. So and so Krishna is saying we're eternally persons before the David wolf body was born. After the David wolf body will be crushed and destroyed, we're eternally persons. And as persons, it means we have desires. Now, and Prabhupada quoting Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna Bhakti Nishkama Ata Eva Shanta. In one sense, Prabhupada says, when our desire is to serve God, to serve Krishna with love and devotion, in a sense, it's not really desire, because it's not like coming from due do have be or have do be, where in order to be fulfilled or happy or peaceful or feel important or valuable or secure, I desire this, and I desire this. No, it's be, do, have. It's the natural expression of the being to desire to please Krishna. So it's not a material desire. And when our desires are completely aligned with that core nature of ourself, then there's peace. Then we experience peace. It's a dynamic peace from being aligned with our life purpose, with our true nature. And then Krishna goes to the next verse. Dehinasmin yatadehe komaram yovanam chara tatadehantara praptir diras tatra namuyati. As the embodied soul continually passes in this body from childhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at the time of death. So we're eternally persons, right? Including when this body's dying. Okay, so Krishna really has a series of 20 verses. We just referenced numbers 2 and 3, where it's just the distinction between the soul and the body, between spirit and matter, and the soul's an eternal, we are eternal individuals. So as the body passes, yesterday around 5 o'clock, I was here and I got a call because my son and daughter, they're at my sister's place in suburban Philadelphia. And I was supposed to go, but on Tuesday, I wasn't feeling so well. And I thought, okay, I was ready. I could travel, but I thought I might be contagious and traveling in a car for 2 hours to the Orlando airport with my son and daughter. And I didn't want to expose them. Anyhow, I made a decision not to travel. So I wasn't there at the Thanksgiving dinner at Carol Wolf's place. So Sita calls me on her cell phone. Sita calls me, and they were right in the middle of like the whole Thanksgiving thing. I'm sure whatever could be offered as prasadam, Sita and I'll be offered. And so I said, oh, hey, Dad, we were talking about you. They were talking about me. Okay. So anyhow, so they gave, and I didn't know who was there other than Sita, Abhi, and Carol. I didn't know who, I really didn't know. And Carol gave me some indication of who might be there, when I was in correspondence with her a week ago. So they gave me the phone, and it took me a while, but I said, oh, this is Aunt Joyce. And then she gave the phone to her daughter, cousin Susan, and like that. Okay, so anyhow, and we had some chat, some jokes like that. Some reminiscing of when, like, I was 7 years old and this and that. Okay. But then, so these are relations to the body. These are relations to the body. So let's say going back 200 years, was the spirit soul now called David Wolf, and the spirit soul called Susan Bank. Were we cousins? Did we have any connection? And the spirit soul in the body called Joyce. Did we have any connection? Right, those like that. Yeah, those who are those who are currently, this is my spouse, this is my child, this is my parent, this is my cousin, this is my neighbor. Okay, right. So this is based on bodily conceptions, based on misidentification of the eternal spirit self with the temporary body. So okay. So actually this morning, as I'm chanting japa, I'm having some resolve that maybe next year, maybe in 2 years, maybe I haven't done this before, but yeah. So maybe along with Sita and Abhi, we can be like a gang. We can be like a transcendental gang. maybe will suggest to my sister, oh, maybe next time we visit, perhaps, yeah, perhaps you'd like to arrange that at your we'll have a bhakti yoga program, something new and different, and you can invite Lisa and Joyce and Marvin and Carol and Mimi and Mitzi, and I'm not making up these names, these are very real names. Okay, yes, and so you can invite and invite your friends and your fellow counselors. My sister is like, and let's have, you know, and I don't know if my sister will agree, but what I'm getting is relation to this verse, like it's my service to offer, because it's definitely my service to maintain connection with these bodily relations. Like it would feel like I'm not fulfilling my dharma to completely neglect them. And these are very good people. These are very good people. And at the same time, to absorb myself unduly, more than relatively rarely in, you know, in the sort of conversation that's not directly Srimad Bhagavatam, well, that's a distraction from my service. So related to this verse and what Prabhupada says, that because he's talking about politics and social service and altruism and philanthropy, and like that. So like, yeah, all these fields of human endeavor, they're like a bunch of zeros if we don't have the one of self-realization and God consciousness and bhakti there. So it's my service to use these bodily relations in such a way, where I'm giving sincere effort to bring the goal of all works, to quote this verse, Narto Yaschaya Karmami, to bring the goal of all works to these people who are dear with me based on bodily relation, not just based on bodily relation. It's described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Devar Shibhuta, that Nakinkaro Nayamini Charajam, Devar Shibhuta, that Yasaran Gatomukundam Paricha Kartum, that we actually have a debt to our mom. We have a debt to our parents. We have a debt to our relatives. We have a debt to the demigods who give us. We have a debt to all the wise people through the age. We have a debt to the community and societal leaders, right? Just like, you know, like the demigods give us the sun and the water, and the society leaders, they create a container. Even the governmental leaders, they create. We have a debt to them. We actually do. And anyone who we give some service to, they have a debt to us. And our debts are naturally fulfilled when we give ourselves to this process of bhakti yoga. So in one sense, my inspiration this morning is like, okay, so I want in the highest way possible to fulfill my debt as a cousin to Susan and Lisa and Craig and Helen and Gary. I want in the highest way possible to fulfill my debt, to endeavor to reciprocate what I've gotten. As a brother, as a nephew, as an uncle, and the way I get to do that is not just like, oh, let's spend time physically or on the phone. What are we doing with the time? Let me do my best with empathy, with what's happening for someone, to give that one that gives value to the string of zeros. The analogy is that Prabhupada uses so much, just like if we have 5 zeros, 10 zeros, 100 zeros, its value is 0. But if we put the 1 in front, then it becomes a very large number, and trillions and quadrillions. Okay, so that 1 That's what this verse is talking. That's self-realization. That's bhakti. Okay. And that's the special opportunity of the human form of life. Just recently we had a recent coach training starting. And we're doing this 5 questions, right? Just as the seminar, just as the course begins, participants ask questions. And one young woman, she said, like, she's dedicated to animal rights and climate consciousness, climate change. So how will her coach training with Safetov support her in that purpose? She's a purposeful young woman. So I endeavored to appreciate her social conscience and consciousness. I shared with her in my email response my published article from about 22 years ago, Social Work and Speciesism, which is about animal rights. It's about animal rights. And I endeavored to communicate that all systems, they're comprised of individuals. And we open up to like what's the consciousness of the individual, that if there's not a chain of consciousness, and someone's coming from greed and illusion and deception and envy and jealousy and resentment, someone's coming from those places and self-absorption, then even if we so-called fix a problem, we're gonna create more problems. Yeah. An example we often use, like at the turn of the century in 1900, the environmentalists of that age, they were their cause, the environmentalist cause in that age was to develop the new invention called the horseless carriage, the automobile, right? Because the horses were causing a problem of air pollution. So with the horse manure in the big cities, New York, Philadelphia, London, Paris. So it was that was the idea, like this new invention, the car, the automobile, that's going to solve the problem of air pollution forever and ever. So just as an example. So I'm not a Luddite. Luddite is someone who's like against the advancement of technology. But if the advancement of technology does not include a purification of consciousness, then it's just going to be shifting the verb. Oh, I was carrying 20 pounds on my left shoulder. Whoa, no, that's relief. Oh, now I'm carrying 40 pounds on my right shoulder. Huh, what just happened there? Oftentimes the solution is worse than the problem if we're not adjusting the consciousness. So life's desire should never be aimed at gratifying the senses. Now this is spoken by a great sage named Sutta Goswami, given to us by Srila Prabhupada. So he's not saying, don't enjoy the senses. Not saying that. Not saying that. No. Saying life's desire should never means the goal he's suggesting. This is like a manual for spiritual beings having a human experience. It's like a manual. And just like, okay, this is like the manual from the creator. These Vedas, particularly the Srimad Bhagavatam, is like killer. You want to be happy, you want to be fulfilled, you want to be peaceful, you want to be secure. So here's some things you can do that's really going to help that. Here's some things you can eliminate that's really going to help that. Okay, so it's not even about good, bad, right, wrong, like that. So it's just, he's saying, like, don't make it our goal. Okay, don't make it our goal. So sure, in the course of fulfilling the goal of human life, since self-realization, search for seeking after the absolute truth, then sometimes it might be, wow, this is a nice day. It's just like really nice temperature and nice weather and a cool breeze. We can appreciate that. And then sometimes in fulfilling life's goal, we might be, it's it's negative 10 degrees. The temperature is not what my senses would prefer. Or it's, wow, it's in the 90s, over 100 degrees. It's like Florida in August or something. Oh, okay. All right. So like another verse from Bhagavad Gita, Matras Parshasta Konti Ashitoshna Sukatukada Agama Pa Inonichas comes to Tikshas for Bharata. That's the verse after Dihinos Minyata Dehi. And that's 2.14. So Krishna says there, he says there, the appearance and disappearance of happiness and distress, and just like the appearance and disappearance, winter and summer seasons, they arise from sense perception. So one should tolerate them without being disturbed. Yamhina vyatyantete pusham pusharshava. Samaduka sukham dira somitattvaya kapite. And Krishna says that it's like sometimes it's going to be like too cold in the winter, too hot in the summer. It's not where sometimes people are going to speak things that are really pleasing to my ego. They're praising me. Sometimes people are going to speak things that are insulting. I'm being criticized unfairly. Okay, right. And sometimes maybe our economic investments are like, yay, it's going well. Sometimes our economic investment, it's crashing. I just lost money, like that. Yeah. So in all spheres of life, there's going to be happiness and distress materially, right? So it means it doesn't mean not to strive for like having a nice roof overhead, but not to make that the ultimate goal is realization of ever increasing realization of the absolute principles, And in the course of that, not to get distracted by, well, I'm really happy today. Let me just celebrate in a way that the elation distracts me from the real business of a spiritual being having a human experience, self-realization, realization of the absolute. Or if things are discouraging, the health, the fitness, the economics, someone who liked me is now criticizing me on internet. Okay, yeah, this stuff's gonna go on. So not that we don't deal with it, but we don't make material happiness the goal. Yehi samsparsha jabo dukyunaya evite jantavambikote nateshu amate buddha. So that a wise person is just not, a wise person is not attached to the temporary happiness, gratification of the senses. Why? Because such things have a beginning and an end, and we're eternal beings. So the idea is, let's take care of our sense gratification in a way where we're healthy. We do our best to be healthy. We're preserving ourselves. We're not neglecting the vehicle, to use that analogy. We're not neglecting the car. Neither are we spending unnecessary time on taking care of the car. Okay, like that. So, okay, practical challenge for me today. So what is it here? So that one should satisfy the senses only in so much as is required for self-preservation and not for sense gratification. So yesterday, late in the day, Prabhupada delivered to me a massive amount of Thanksgiving prasad, an abundant amount. So I've already demonstrated impressive self-restraint, because I didn't consume all of it last night. There's something in my mind like, David Wolf, Dhira Govinda Das, you remember those like 6,000 times where you eat big at night, then the next morning you're not so happy about it? Remember any of those times? Oh yeah, it don't work so well. Okay, right. So then I'm like, okay, so don't eat those extra, don't eat those extra 4 plates that you don't really need. So it's right there in the refrigerator for today, right? So and it's certainly enjoyable for the tongue, for the belly. yeah, so to not neglect taking care of the car, right? The body's like a vehicle. And at the same time, not to indulge in it, not to take care of it in a spirit of, yeah, this is my vehicle. This is my vehicle to support me in that most sublime, truly joyful mission of the human form of life, self-realization and increasing experience of the absolute. Now, this term absolute, some could say, oh, once you go into absolute, that means you're closed-minded. Absolute means it means that it's like narrow. It means there's no other truth. So just like earlier we said, like this idea of like, oh, I'm David Wolf. I'm 61 years old from Northeast Philadelphia. I'm the brother of Carol, and I'm a cousin of Susan and Joyce. I'm father of Sita and Abhi. Okay. So is that absolute truth? No. Absolute means that which is true in all time and space, right? So that's what this verse is talking about, that which is true in all time and space. So again, was I David Wolf a trillion years ago? Was I born to be David Wolf 1,000 years from now? No, that identity is temporary. It's temporary. But I'm not this body. I'm not even this material mind. I'm eternal spirit soul. I'm a servant of the Supreme. I'm a servant of Source. I'm a servant of Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These are truths that are true in all time and space, connecting with not just intellectually, but experientially. Truth that is good in all time and space. That's fulfilling. That's fulfilling. And that's, Prabhupada talks about that higher taste principle in this verse. How we get the higher taste from living from those truths, then we're no longer seeking ephemeral, hollow pseudo fulfillment in the shadow world. In the shadow world. Yeah. So so human life is meant for inquiry into the absolute truth. And so again, this is like a manual. So to realize there's a principle in Bhagavad Gita called like the regulative principles of freedom. Now, sometimes something like the term regulation, it could be like regulation or discipline. It can have like a not very warm and fuzzy feel to it. All right. But if properly applied, then conscious regulation, conscious discipline supports me to achieve any goal. Just a simple example. Say if I want to drive from, if I want to drive from here, from North Florida to South Florida to Miami. So I can say, well, because I'm a free person, I'm an independent person, I'm me, I'm who I am. Then today, I have an inspiration. I'm going to drive on the left side of the road. And for me today, if the light is red, that means go very fast because I'm not following any rules. I'm free. That's spiritual. Now we understand, of course, it's a simple example. We understand, of course, that such freedom will constrain my freedom in a prison, a hospital, with debt, maybe in a morgue, right? Whereas no, actually, so there's these rules of the road. Drive on the right side. It's America. Okay. Was England, drive on the left side. Drive on the right side. Stop at a red light. Go at a green light. I'm grateful for these rules of the road that I choose to follow them and others choose to follow them. Those regulative principles, they free me. They free me to achieve my destination of getting to Miami. So in this case, the destination recommended by these ancient sages as spiritual beings having a human experience, so the destination realize who we are as not the temporary body, as the joyful spirit soul, as servants of God. And so here's some rules of the road that'll support that realization of the absolute. Again, just like, okay, let's say if I was talking some personalities from my childhood. So let's say in first or second grade, I heard from Mrs. Gerbark, who I trusted as an authority. She was trustworthy. So Mrs. Gerbark taught me 3 + 3 is 6. So I got it. So that's an absolute truth. And so someone can say, oh, that means you're closed-minded because you're saying absolute. No. So because in modern day, or postmodern day even more, kind of this idea of open-mindedness, which it is a virtue to be open-minded and not so insecure in myself that I need to try to make everyone like me and I'm narrow-minded. So to be open-minded and open-spirited, open-hearted, that is a virtue for sure. But then it's become kind of like that becomes the goal in itself. That's the only virtue. And if anyone asserts that, because see, actually openness is meant to be an instrumental virtue through which we realize more and more fully that which is objective, right? So I was open. I heard from Mrs. Gerbarg, a trusted authority, and I came to the objective truth, 3 + 3 is 6. So yeah, and I continue to be open. Actually, if anyone here or your friends were to present evidence that 3 + 3 is not 6, I'm open to hear it. And I stand strong. 3 + 3, this is absolute truth. So there is objective truth. And we want to be open-minded, openness as an instrumental virtue to realize more and more as our life goes on and after the life of this body, realize more and more absolute truth. And this Bhagavatam, actually the very next verse talks about three major aspects of realizing the absolute. We're not going to go there now. This verse, all these verses in this area of Bhagavatam are very fundamental, foundational, profound. And so, as I know you're all aware, a basic process, a basic rule of the road to support us in this self-realization and deepened experience and realization of the absolute truth is a basic thing to do, to go at green is to chant the names of God. Particularly recommended names of God in this age for self-realization and realization of developing our love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, chanting this mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. How much? As much as possible, Kirtanya Sadahari. And to chant any name of God from any tradition, like in the ancient Hebrew tradition, there's the Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, that contains names of God. This is purifying for the heart. This text is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, Text 10. It reads, Kamasyanendriya Pritir Labo Jivete Avata Jivasya Tattva Jigyasa Nartayas Cheha Karma Bi. Life's desire should never be aimed at gratifying the senses. One should desire to live only because human life enables one to inquire about the absolute truth. This should be the goal of all works. Hare Krishna, thank you all for your presence, attention, and listening. Thanks for giving yourself to this meaningful use of human time. So I welcome at this time, if anyone would like to share any comments, questions, inspirations, doubts, realizations, if anyone would like to ask or share at this time.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
For your class. It was inspiring and fun to listen to. And what you shared about your family members and having a duty towards them, I find very it brings peace to my mind. Like just now, I'm preparing samosas, or just the dough and the inside of it, because my nephew and niece are coming and they want to make samosas, and they're young and very wild, and I don't enjoy really spending time with them so much. But because they called me and they said, Annette, can we do samosas together? And I thought, yeah, let's do it. And we can offer them to Krishna together and they will have fun. And and so it's I just feel I shifted from, okay, they're coming in half an hour, to, wow, I get to be with them and serve them. It's part of my duty.
I'm glad that something I spoke has inspired transformation in your heart towards your niece and nephew.
Yes, it has. And then another two other things that spoke to me. One is from the purport, where it says, what does it say? Seekers of the absolute truth are never alert by unnecessary engagement in sense gratification, because the serious students seeking the absolute truth are always overwhelmed with the work of researching the truth.
Yeah.
I like that. They're always overwhelmed. It's not overwhelmed, oh, there's so many things to do, and it's overwhelmed because there's so much research to be done about Krishna and about serving Krishna. So that's fun. I like that.
Thanks for that, because usually we use overwhelm in a negative sense. So probably he's sharing it in an enthusiastic sense. So there's just no time for superfluous sense gratification, because we're so, our schedule's full with researching the absolute truth. Thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah, and then one is next was more like a question. Today we were discussing with Anuka Noah. Actually, I read a verse to them from Bhagavad Gita about the mind. And then it said, well, as long as we do things for sense gratification, it's serving the false ego.
Yeah.
As long as we're not doing anything that we don't do for Krishna is serving the false ego. And so my daughters got really upset about this, especially Noah. And she said, so you're saying that everything I do for my rabbits and for my friends at school and all the Christmas presents I'm making for my friends, that's all false ego activity?
She had an objection.
Yes. And then I felt really challenged to how to present this, how to explain it to a child. I mean, she's 12 years old, but still she's a child. How to explain it so it's not negative. It's not, it's not, I tried to say, well, it's not, of course, it's wonderful that you're doing all this for the animals and for your friends. It's wonderful. At the same time, it is, as long as she's not doing it for Krishna, it's for her false ego. And how to explain that to a child in a positive way, in an encouraging way, and not know that she doesn't feel crushed.
Yeah, crushed or angry at mom or.
Yeah, I'm okay with angry. I got used to that. I have 12 years of practice. But
Okay.
doesn't feel crushed.
Thanks for your question. Okay. All right. Well, all right. So, I have to take out the. Right. Well, a few things come to mind. Thanks for sharing what you highlight in the purport. Yeah. Okay. So one thing is like, okay, so the essence of false ego is misidentification of the self. with the material body or the material mind. Okay. So yeah, and to here, like we can engage in friendships or in such a way, where our intention in being nice and kind, first we can have some self-awareness, like, okay, to what extent is my motivation that people will like me and approve of me, and people will and they'll see me and they'll adore me, and to what extent is it about me in a way that might not be terrible, but it is about me. People will adore me and I'll be special to them. I'll fulfill my need to be needed. We can invite, not getting harsh with ourselves. We can invite just healthy, even playful self-awareness. And then, how can I be nice to the animals and my friends and like that, in a way that somehow supports realization for them and me of who I am as that eternal being, like that. So even like Christmas presents, okay, well, maybe there's a way to share Christmas presents that help people to remember the real spirit of Christmas, Jesus, right? And then maybe they might appreciate me. We're not saying don't appreciate me or like that, but then, it really helps them remember this person, Jesus, who who sacrificed himself for God. That's as this verse says, that he's really showing the wonderful example of how to give one's life to God. So someone remembers God's pure devotee Jesus, and we support them to go in that direction. Okay, then it's not about my false ego anymore. So just maybe there are some ways we can dovetail all of that, like that. That's one thing that comes. And the other thing is we can be encouraging that, okay, even if in some ways it might be about, look, maybe so, we don't say that, but see, I'm a nice person, I'm a kind person, might be about me getting praise or people liking me and like that. Okay, but still, if the way we're doing it is sattva, they maybe explain a bit about their sattva, rajas, and tama. And if in our relations, even if it's not so much about self-realization or God or Krishna or Jesus, but if it's sattvic compared to the other modes, like you're taking care of animals instead of killing them to taste their flesh, okay, that's sattvic. And sattva, that is close to the soul, that is closer to God. So it's the most it's the most subtle of the forms of false ego. So that's good. So that's a healthy direction. Those are a few things that come to me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anandini. Thank you. Any other comments, questions, sharing at this time? Hare Krishna. Okay. Right. Bhakti yoga programs.
Hare Krishna. I'm just wanting to hear more, so that's why. Like the verse say, a healthy life.
Yeah.
And my experience is that we don't have control over that.
Yeah.
Like Krishna is again and again giving me that message.
Yeah.
That you're not in control of your health. And when I'm thinking like, like we were having that discussion this morning with Kelly about, like feeling sick and feeling, oh, what did I do? Or what did I not do? And feeling such a sense of responsibility.
Yeah.
And while also like seeing that it's really not in our power. You can have someone doing all the right thing for their health and be sick. And you can have someone doing all the wrong thing for their health and be healthy or not sick. So I was just thinking of what does that mean, like a healthy life?
Okay. Thanks for sharing, Melanie. Thank you. Thanks for expressing. Yes. Yeah. So I see it like in all attempts at service, and this is a theme throughout Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, that our opportunity and responsibility is to give our sincere endeavor without attachment to the results. And whether it's in our economic life, whether it's in our relationships, whether it's in any endeavor. So in terms of, okay, to use an analogy, it's like, okay, if we've got a car, again, the purpose of metaphor or analogy is something we can easily understand that helps us to understand something that's more difficult. But if we have a car, yeah, it's our responsibility to take care of the car and just take care of it. I got it checked, and I did this, and I didn't drive it in a hazardous way, and I'm taking care of the tire pressure. Okay. And also to not like I spend 5 hours a day, make sure the car is like, no, that the car is a vehicle. The car's not the goal, but let's take care of it. And so we give our 100%, and each car at different times is going to have its breakdowns, and each car at different times is going to be in the junkyard. So similarly, like we give our 100% to the service in a growth edge balanced way of caring for the body, to have a healthy body and mind and emotions. We give our 100%. And at some point, all material bodies, human form and other forms, will experience disease, the effects of old age, and death. So like in all services, we give our sincere effort and know that ultimately the results are not in our control. So results are not my control. Like I can react to that like, okay, I just won't care anymore. And then I like that, but okay, so still I've got responsibility. This body, it's an energy of God. It's given to me. Let me do my best to take care of it according to my understanding, knowing that the results are not under my control. And so those are some principles that come to mind there.
Yeah, it's like it's not like in a name that there is no result, not giving any effort, but it's not giving the effort because I want to create a result.
Yeah.
Finding the balance of like being in a spirit of service.
Spirit of service. I like that. It's a concise, eloquent term that you use to describe what I took a lot of words to try to say. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says, essential truth spoken concisely is true eloquence. So spirit of service, to do the service in a spirit of service. Thanks for that. Anandini.
What comes to my mind with your question, Malini, is that I want to look in the Sanskrit, it doesn't say healthy life, it says self-preservation.
Yeah.
And healthy life, it seems that's what Srila Prabhupada added to help us understand maybe what it means.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
so what I learned is that in Sanskrit, the word for health is svasta.
Basta.
Svasta.
Yeah.
That means situate, or that translates into situated in the self. And I find that interesting in this connection also, and to your question, that it doesn't say, health doesn't say everything's in order and working properly and where the body doesn't get sick. It means situated in the self. And I have that experience often, that when I'm sick, my body is sick, I am more situated in the self than when my body is healthy.
Thanks for sharing that. Thank you. Thanks for that.
So self-preservation is more about the soul self than material body self, I'm asking.
Thank you, Kelly. I see your comment relating to where I started before I even started talking about this particular verse, that like in each verse, there's direct, simple meaning, and there's layers and layers of meaning. So yeah, ultimately, self-preservation, self-care, we hear these terms all the time. So this is important to know what's the self? What's the self? Okay. So ultimately, essentially, self-preservation is who I am, as, to use that analogy, is not the car. I'm the driver of the car. What's it mean? What's it mean to care for the driver? Right? Because if I say, no, I'm giving a lot of time to self-care. Look, I had the car washed and detailed, and I take it every month for service. And look what I did to the hubcaps. Whoa. Okay. So then someone, I don't know what people do to hubcaps, but there are people, like I know they're absorbed in hubcaps. So, okay, but then someone can say, well, actually, if I look at you, it looks like you haven't had like a decent meal in a few weeks. And it looks like you need some water. You haven't taken a bath in a while. You're really neglected. No, look at the hubcaps. I'm doing great. No, that's just the vehicle. Okay, so what's it mean to nurture the driver of the car? So similarly, the body's like a vehicle. We do want to have a healthy. We do want to endeavor, because whether the body, in one sense, the body is disease. No, I'm healthy today. Like I'm feeling healthy today. The body is disease. It's a covering of the soul. The body it's a manifestation of the disease consciousness of the soul that wants to enjoy separately from service to God. But we want to, we want to endeavor for the car, the body, to be, as healthy as possible, understanding it's in the context of birth, death, old age, disease. And ultimate essential self-preservation is for the timeless spiritual being that inhabits the body, for the driver of the car. So I believe the term self-preservation, health, it can certainly be understood as referring to both the body and the soul in this verse. And ultimately, we can be sure, as much as we give to the body's preservation, it won't be preserved. Right? The body won't be preserved. Survival of the fittest. Here's the thing: in bodily conception of life, no one's going to be survived, and no one even knows what being fit means. Okay. So, right. So so to the extent that we engage in service to Krishna, service to God, through chanting Hare Krishna, following regular principles, just having discussions like this, to the extent that we engage in devotional service, then we're fit and we'll survive. Because then we're doing what the soul does in eternity. We engage in bhakti, we engage in service to Krishna. That's fit, and that's that's a real plan for eternal survival. Thank you, Kelly. Anything else?
Hey, Bo.
Hare Krishna Daru Prabhu.
Hi, Bo. Well, just I have to add to what I was saying to you last night that being able to see you now is so wonderful, because I know that you say, and you mean it, that your words are chosen very carefully. You don't just speak off the cuff. You choose very carefully. Similarly, the expressions you use in your face and your hands, they're very meaningful. And I'm so glad I'm seeing them, which I couldn't see in that video last night. So it was reconfirming to what I was feeling. I can't stress enough. I was also thinking, hey, what's this? We're talking about enlightenment. Where's the light? So anyhow, I just wanted to pass it on. So thank you very much for the class that I did here.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that. Yeah, and I'm glad you're here. You know, you came around 9 o'clock, and perhaps you'll catch the recording of the first part. I appreciate your comment. Daru Brahma called me last night, and he was watching a video from a few days ago at Prabhupada House in Melrose. I know Mother Anasuya is here, one of the founders of that project. And Daru was appreciating the program and saying that, oh, in the video, there wasn't like enough light to really see the speakers. So I took that on board. Yeah, thanks for that. You know, really, we talk a lot about communication, and there's different types of communication. And, you know, we talk a lot, like in our software programs, about like non-verbal communication. And actually in Vedic epistemology, there's 10 types of epistemologies, or ways to know. Prabhupada generally, he generally condenses them to 3 types. Okay, Pratyaksha, Anumana, and Shabda Brahman, sense gratification through direct experience of the senses, and then the scientific and material science empirical method, and then Shabda Brahman, knowledge from authorized authorities. But it can be expanded instead of collapsed to 10. And one of the types of Vedic communication is called cheshta. Cheshta, maybe it says cheshta, which basically means bodily gestures. So there's a lot of communication happening, of course, in the paralinguistics and in the bodily gestures. So I appreciate what you're appreciating about that way of communicating through these Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita discussions. Yeah.
Thank you.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.